I can figure out how to take the pick down. Welcome, everyone. Episode 2 of Law and Order. Me, my great friend Ryan Mullally here, an attorney. Me, a loudmouth. Should be an interesting show today. I was just talking to Ryan before we came on. So we're a week behind because I took a week off for Nashville. Man, what a day to be covering legal news. I don't know that we could do it if we had 8 hours, let alone 2. We're going to try our damnedest, so I think it's going to be a great show. Ryan, how are you today? Thanks so much for being with me.
First of all, I don't know if I was already in a good mood. I was excited for Law and Order, but that theme song is gas. That is straight gas. So my mood's elevated, even though the legal news we're going to talk about is pretty goddamn grim. So yeah. I think it's going to be, there's a ton to talk about. I think we said we were going to start with all the hubbub about whether the military can resist lawful orders. Maybe then segue into the Comey, Letitia James stuff, and if time allows Epstein, amazing that Epstein wouldn't be the lead story, but that's where we are in this news cycle. There's so much happening, it's a struggle just to keep up.
Yeah, even that's not comprehensive, but yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Now, I'll remind everyone in the audience, we'd like to spend the last half an hour asking audience questions. We're going to prioritize sort of super chats, so any super chats that you put in Ryan's channel, that you put in mine, will be prioritized if there's a question that we think that there would be a relevant answer. But we definitely want to make sure that we're getting to all of those sorts of questions. So start with this initial story. It's sort of a comedy of errors. It's ultimately what you end up seeing is who could fall on their face last, it seems like, with a lot of these legal stories. And this first story, which is sort of, you had these Democrats that put out this ad that sort of implied that there was something illegal that Trump was ordering our military to do, and that lawfully the military could resist these orders because they are adhering to the Constitution instead of unlawful orders. Then, of course, Trump calls that out and says this is sedition and seems to imply that this could lead to a death penalty type thing. What's your take on all this, starting with sort of the Democrats' initial claims that seem to be implying that the military could refuse these orders?
Yeah, and we need to get into Trump as well, but starting with the Democratic lawmakers, I mean, there's a thing that I like to call a lawyer's lie. It's when you say something and it's technically true, but you're leaving out the really important part, and you're leaving it out on purpose because, you know, we who write careful legal statements are pretty good at coming up with a way of phrasing something that skirts the line, right? And that's what these lawmakers did, because they are right. Any soldier has the right to refuse to follow an unlawful order. That's true. That's true. They left out something rather important, which is that under the Uniform Code of Military Justice and the laws of court-martial, there is a presumption that all orders are lawful. And if a soldier says this is unlawful, I'm not gonna follow the order, they're taking the risk of being court-martialed for mutiny, for, you know, like that they could go to jail, they could lose their career. You're not asking them to take a small risk. And the thing about this situation, like talk about like the boats in Venezuela that Trump's been striking. All right, is that legal? It's a gray area. I'm going to tell you for sure, we don't know. But Obama had drone strikes in the Middle East, very similar. Apparently that was, you know, legal or at least not challenged. There's no Supreme Court case on it. And I think it's recklessly irresponsible to ask soldiers to bet their livelihood on the outcome of a case that hasn't been decided yet. You can't do that. Like, these are people defending the country. If Trump orders them to strike those boats and they say no, they are probably going to jail. That's the most likely outcome. And it's disgraceful to infer that they would have some other outcome, or that they must disobey orders and take this risk upon themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it would be the equivalent. Like, there's the thing I hear the most that's like this in my world is, I've debated several times on sort of unlawful law enforcement action, such as they pull someone out of a car. Usually it's a race debate, right? So you'll be talking to someone about like, oh, did they mistreat this particular person because of racism, etc. And my feeling on that's been, it's my duty as someone who's not a lawyer and someone who's looking out for, knowing that some people are listening to me, to say, always to the best of your ability, you should comply with law enforcement. unless it is an insane above and beyond, right? And I had the last time I debated someone, they were like, so if law enforcement says we demand you tie up your wife and start slapping her in the face, well, that's such an absurd example. But what happens is, by them claiming like, well, technically, legally, if law enforcement goes beyond the scope, you're allowed to lawfully resist. Right, but you're saying that with the implicit assumption in this example where they pulled this man over for speeding. And it's like, no, you're going to get someone killed. Someone's going to flee the police, or they're going to start fighting back against law enforcement. And then law enforcement's going to escalate that force, and they're going to get away with it, right? Regardless if you thought the initial stop was wrong. That's exactly what's going on here. It's technically what they said is true, but it is undoubtable that the implicit message here is we think that Trump is doing things that are unlawful, and so therefore we will protect you, and you're within your rights to ignore this. And it's not going to be these senators whose lives are ruined by it. It's going to be these average military people, and it's a shame that it's came to that, and arguably a crime that there is a crime. I think maybe you know more about this in the USMJ. For people that are sort of encouraging refusal of orders. And so there is a potential crime that could come with what these senators are doing as well.
I mean, certainly, if the senators were still in the active military and they said what they said, the articles of court-martial would be drawn, right?
Well, they're claiming that they're going to do that with Kelly.
Yeah, because it's dicey, because can they recall him and then do it? And we'll see how that plays out, because there are obviously in the military rules about you can't ferment disorder. You can't tell people, hey, let's all resist orders on Tuesday. Like, the military is a chain of command organization. That's its bread and butter. Following orders is exactly what you're supposed to do. And the truth is, that's why the presumption exists, right? Because there's a presumption all orders are lawful. Why? Well, it's true. You have the right to resist an unlawful order. And you have the obligation to resist what's called a manifestly unlawful order, right? Like if they said, like, go genocide that town, or they said, go essay that girl, like, that's okay. Yeah, no question there. But when it's in a gray area, soldiers need to be able to operate, and they have to be able to follow orders. So they rely on the presumption. They say, well, okay, I was ordered to do this. I get that there's a legal dispute, but I can follow through because it's presumptively legal, so I'm not going to get in trouble, right? And yeah, I think that encouraging soldiers to resist orders that are in that gray area is definitely fermenting unrest amongst the ranks. Now, I've never heard of somebody getting called back into service to be court-martialed, so I don't know whether that nuance with Kelly is going to hold up, but certainly, if he had been in the armed services, they would have been court-martialed for that, because it's unthinkable. I mean, imagine in the Obama administration. And by the way, this is not me in favor of these policies. I was against the drone strikes during the Obama administration. I think it's not great policy. I'm not sure it's legal. But if a soldier had said, no, I'm not pushing the button, obviously court-martialed. Court-martialed.
And here's why, right? Two things to say on this real quick. Like, when it comes to military specifically, someone who's soft like me, like, the nature of what the military is doing on an average conflict is something that would turn my stomach, even if it's morally just. You're talking about intentionally ending the lives of people who are enemy combatants, enemy soldiers, etc. If you allow it up to the troops' judgment, who knows the sort of judgment that they could come to and say, I think this is unethical or immoral or illegal. And now all of a sudden, look where you're at. Take that drone strike issue. Let's assume that we had some sort of special force that was on the ground, right? And that was targeting that. Like, okay, the target's in the area. Now go ahead and do the strike. And you don't. You literally could jeopardize the lives of your fellow soldiers by refusing to carry out even an order such as that, let alone other orders that we would see. So that's why the presumption needs to be there, because else the chain of command falls through. And if you just let it up to every soldier, like, look, you make up your mind whether or not you think technically this might fall slightly outside the bounds of legality, all of a sudden, what you've done is anybody with any sort of political motivation could make those claims. Look at the things that they have claimed that what Trump does is illegal. And let's not kid ourselves, it could happen the other way. You could absolutely have Obama or Biden and some of the orders that they declared be thought to be illegal by reasonable people. But you can't have soldiers on the ground trying to make those decisions in real time, or else lives will be in jeopardy.
Oh, like, imagine it in the National Guard context. We've had a lot of discussions about National Guard in the city this year, right? There's litigation in LA. There's litigation in the Ninth Circuit. There's litigation in Portland. There's litigation in Chicago. There's district court decisions. There's Supreme Court. There's appellate court decisions. Eventually, this is going to the Supreme Court. If Trump gives an order that says the National Guard needs to deploy in Chicago and defend this federal building, right? And a soldier says, I'm not doing it because I think that's illegal. Well, it's like, well, hold on, guy. This is a swirling legal question. Who knows what's going to happen? You got conflicting courts. You got appellate courts overruling district courts. It's eventually going to go to the Supreme Court. You don't know whether it's illegal. You don't know. You're gambling. You're gambling on what the Supreme Court's going to do. And if it turns out that you're wrong and it is illegal, the military code's perfectly clear. Your personal philosophy, your personal conscience, your personal religion is not a justification for disobeying an order. You have to be right. You have to be actually right that it was illegal, or you go to jail. And I think that that's just not a thing you can ask a soldier to do. They're not legal scholars. You can't ask them to guess how the Supreme Court's going to rule, right? So you have to give them the presumption. And I think that, yeah, what strikes me about this is just the callous disregard on the Democrat side for the soldiers involved. And I don't think they're going to fall for it. I don't think so. I think soldiers actually know what's up. But like, if a soldier did see that message and then disregarded an order and then went to jail, lost their career, was court-martialed, like, they're not going to get bailed out by these lawmakers. They're going to go to jail, right? Like, I mean, these are very serious consequences. And I don't know. It just struck me as incredibly callous to try to manipulate service people that way.
Two little quick things on this more. Take the legal ramifications out for these Democratic senators. To me, this is a pattern. We'll see what you think about this. There seems to have been a pattern for people within the Trump administration, whether it be there was claims that when it came to him wanting to pull troops in his first term out of Syria, that basically the generals misled him about how many troops were there. There's been other instances where people in the military, in the State Department, etc., have sort of intentionally sabotaged what they thought that he was trying to do. This seems to be an effort by Democrats to sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We want sort of subversion from within, and take the legal ramifications out. Politically, this is a very dangerous game. And this sort of goes into why we're doing this show in the first place. It's not the same as it was in like the mid 90s, where there was sort of a level of respect between the Republicans and Democrats, and you would have never seen something to this degree. Now it just seems that, like, you know, in my perspective, I think it starts with the hatred of Donald Trump. Maybe you have a different perspective, but it seems that, like, it's all hands on deck. And it's like, look, we feel that we are going against someone who is the great evil orange man. And so, hey, everything's on the table, including wink, wink, nudge, nudge. People subvert his administration, even from within inside the military.
Well, and I think people confuse their personal conscience and their personal politics with how the military operates. Right? Like, I mean, okay, let's say these senators feel very, very strongly about, and they didn't name the issue. You could probably guess it's Venezuela or the National Guard would be the most likely candidates. But let's say they feel really strongly about one or both of those issues. Okay, you feel really strongly about it. I get it. I get that you feel strongly about it. But yeah, I think you're right. In the bygone era of our youth, I don't think anybody would feel comfortable trying to rope in, you know,
at least not publicly, like publicly,
yeah, I mean,
like this. That's what's crazy, right?
It's a pretty shameful thing to do, right? And then you say, like, oh, well, we're just saying you have the right to resist lawful orders, and isn't that technically true? And it's like, yeah, it's a lawyer's lie. It's technically true, but you're playing games with the lives of people who you'll never meet, you'll never know, right? They're out there defending the country, and you don't give a shit what happens to them. And that's what made me annoyed about this, where it's just so irresponsible. And you would think that people who are in high elected office in the country would care more about the men and women who defend it, truthfully.
And you see someone in your chat saying, oh, no, not hatred of a fascist. Well, be careful. Like, it depends on the perspective you're looking at. You could very well say that the actions of Barack Obama with his drone strikes were fascist. You could say the ability for him to sort of wiretap at least one media member, James Rosen, illustrated him being a fascist presidency. And we see, wasn't it under Obama we had the whistleblower reality winner? That was right? Right. There's all sorts of ramifications if people with inside sort of our intel agencies or military decide on their own. I've decided this person is an authoritarian, they're a fascist, and so therefore I'm allowed to legitimately morally subvert them. It's easy when it's your side. It's easy for the people that assume they're correct to be like, Trump's a fascist, therefore I don't care. And that's the real truth. Most of these people that advocate for this sort of stuff, or what I saw as the blatant illegal lawfare against Trump, if you get down to brass tacks, they're like this gentleman thinks. He's a fascist, I don't care. Do whatever you can to him.
But also you got to think about this from the perspective of the soldier, right? You're the soldier. You're in the room. You operate the drone. Your job is to push the target shoot button, right? You're not briefed. You haven't seen the intelligence reports about what's in the boat. In the Obama era, you weren't the guy who was assessing the threat level of the terrorist, right? You're the guy pushing the kill button. That's your job. Now, maybe you say, this guy's a fascist, I'm not going to follow his orders. Okay, well, now you're taking the risk that you go to jail, A. But B, let's set aside that. Let's just say, what if you're wrong? You didn't see the intelligence report. What if that's a boat full of fentanyl? They don't care. These people don't care. 10,000 people overdose next month. Or take it back to the Obama, because I want to be bipartisan here. Like, I was not a supporter of those drone strikes. I was opposed.
Me too.
But let's say that you said, I'm opposed. This seems illegal. I'm not pushing that button. I'm not going to shoot this man in the Middle East. And then he does another 9/11. Like, this is actually a terrorist, right? Like, that's why the chain of command operates the way it does. It's not up to the soldier in the operations area to make the decision about how to deal with the intelligence that the seniors are looking at. This is not fair.
The online commentary that hates Trump. This is what you see. Here's the two comments. Oh, no, not hatred of a fascist. And when I bring up, be careful, people could say the same about Obama, then lock Obama up. Now, here's a gentleman that thinks Trump's a fascist. Then go do something about it. Instead of recommending that members of the military put their lives on the line, you do something about it. It's easy to sit back in your comfy chair online and say, I think the military should disobey lawful or potentially illegal orders and put their lives on the line, right? It's easy, like we've seen other commentators that have like all but called for violence against Trump and supporters. It's easy to rile up your base for that, knowing that you won't suffer the ramifications of that gone wrong. What I'm suggesting is, even when it is presidents that I don't like issuing orders I don't like, it is a fool's errand to recommend to people in our military that they should disobey orders. And that should be doubly true if you're a member of the U.S. Political sphere. You should be very careful before you're recommending this stuff. And the flippancy which people are riling up the base is one thing. Telling people to disobey orders is another. It's a crime. Right? If the military does that and they're wrong, it's a crime. You don't care. I get that. Orange man bad, so it's okay. Let other people's lives suffer. Let them spend the rest of their life in Leavenworth. You don't give a shit because orange man bad.
Well, and let's be honest about who they're pitching this message to. This message is pitched to the grunts, right? To the low-level soldiers, because there's some chance a low-level soldier is going to see this on social media and go, oh, shit, maybe I'm like this guy. I think this guy's a fascist. I'm going to say no. It's not pitched to the generals. The generals know what the law is. They know that they can resist. Right. You don't need to tell them this. So this is going directly to the ears of the people who don't have enough information to make the decision in a way that won't jeopardize the lives of their livelihood and families. You know, if there's a general who thinks an order is unlawful, I have no doubt that they are well positioned to push back and say, no, I don't think we can do that, and here's why. This is. I think it's an illegal order, and I can't follow it. I don't think generals need to be reminded of this. I think they know, right? So it just strikes me as a deeply unfair way to message this issue, which would have given Trump the moral high ground if he had just
Yeah,
kept
now
his
we're
mouth
almost
shut for like, just take a breath before you post something. Like, it was so frustrating to
yes.
watch him spin out on this.
So the closest, other than actual military codes, the closest in the legal code that I could find outside the scope of, can you explain this very quick? I have a general understanding of this, but there is a separate amount of legal issues that comes with being a member of the military. So there's legal codes unique to being a member of the military, correct?
Yeah, you're subject to the military code of justice, and then you're subject to like, it's called like the manual of courts martial, basically. So there's the list of the offenses that you can get court-martialed for, and this is where when I'm talking about the fact that you have a duty to disobey a manifestly unlawful order, the right but not the duty to disobey an unlawful order, and that there's a presumption of lawfulness. This is all directly from the Uniform Code of Military Justice and the the Articles for Court Martial, and this is spelled out. And these are not civilian courts. Like, if you violate an order, you're going to be tried before a military tribunal, and the military tribunal is going to be asking very different questions. Like, if a police officer told me to do something and I didn't do it, I might get an obstruction charge. It's like there's situations where you have to follow order, but for a soldier to disobey an order, that's already convictable, right? You don't need anything else. That by itself, that is a convictable
Correct.
offense.
And that's something that us as civilians, we're allowed to have opinions and not do things. It's a different level, right? We're not going to be convicted under that. Now, this is the only law I could see that arguably these Democrat senators were breaking. And I don't know if you've seen this. So this is USC 2387. And it says, whoever with intent to interfere with, impair, or influence the loyalty, morale, or discipline of the military or naval forces of the United States advises, counsels, urges, or in any manner causes or attempts to cause insubordination, disloyal, immunity, refusal of duty by any member of the military or naval force of the United States, or distributes or attempts to distribute any written, printed matter, blah, 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 shall be fined under this title or prison not more than 10 years or both, and shall be ineligible for employment by the United States or any department agency thereof for 5 years next following the conviction. Do you think that these Democratic senators have risen to the level of potentially being charged under this law?
Probably not. Probably. I mean, charged, you could charge them. Like, I'm sure, I'm relatively certain you could get this past a grand jury, because a grand jury is a fairly low bar. But in terms of getting a conviction, I don't think so. Because while I do think it's fair to criticize them, because the implication of what they said, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, there's unlawful orders you should be resisting. What the key word there is with intent, right? So you have to intend for people to disobey an order, and I'm not really sure you could prove that here, right? Because they all they said was you should disobey. You have the right to disobey an unlawful order. And if you look at all the military training manuals, it's going to say the exact same thing, right? Because that's true. It is a correct statement of the law. I think the context is clear, but I think they were very careful, and that was a legally like, lawyers reviewed that statement, and they didn't make it off the cuff. I think that actually would be very difficult to convict for.
I agree in the sense it would be difficult to convict. I'd like to see them bring the charges anyways, because I think there needs to be a dissuasion from this sort of thing happening in the future from either side. And I think it's clear what their intent was. However, me thinking that it's clear is different than proving it beyond a reasonable doubt, which would be necessary for a conviction. So I don't know. I could understand if they don't bring these charges, but I think at some point there has to be some sort of ramifications. And as we've learned with Trump and all of his associates, the process is the punishment. And so if they decided to bring charges, and they would be lawfully within their right, I think, to go to a grand jury, maybe potentially having to suffer through the embarrassment would be worth it. Now, I guess the counter to that would be, yeah, but does this hurt Trump's political capital? And if they're going after legitimate criminals, like potentially James Comey, et cetera, does this hurt perceptually that, because it seems like they're just going after anyone that's an opponent? Well, so I can see it both ways.
I think we're going to get into this more later, but the Trump administration needs to be careful, because they stepped on some legal rakes recently, and it makes them look incompetent, right? And that does hurt your perception, right? If you're saying I'm going to do X and we do Y, like imagine how much better they'd be if they had never promised the Epstein files and hadn't handed out those fucking white binders, right?
Yep.
It makes them look incompetent and it makes them look like they're hiding something. We're going to get into Comey later, but they promised to prosecute Comey. Endless rake stepping. And to me, Trump could have claimed the moral high ground here if he was a little bit less impulsive. Like if instead of the statement, and we'll get into this, but he called them seditious and he said the penalty is death, neither of which is true. But if he had said instead something like, we have the best military in the world, the best trained military in the world. They know exactly what the laws of the military are and the rules of the military are. And I'll tell you what, if you six were in the military still, you'd be court-martialed for that. Right?
See, I would have even gone further if Trump would have said, look, you're possibly violating, USC 2387, fine. But the problem is, and this is why I wanted to bring this law up, is Trump claimed that they were seditious, which has a very specific legal term. It's one thing if I say they're seditious. It's another thing if the president of the United States says it, right? That's different to being an online person using the term as a layman. And you can say, well, Trump's not a lawyer. He's sort of using it as a layman. Yeah, but he is the president. And so you have to, you should choose your words more carefully, particularly if it's in writing. I want to bring up the code for sedition here because I think we're both in agreement on this. This is not sedition.
No.
Despite the fact that neither of us like what the Democrats did, nor is the penalty for sedition the death penalty, right?
I mean, we used to have robust sedition laws in this country. They were struck down because they violate free speech. Like the idea is that back in the old days, you could commit sedition just by saying something. Like just saying, I hate the government, let's burn it all down. Oh, okay, you're opposed to the government? Sedition. These days, we have a much more robust First Amendment. And even if you wrote a law like that, it would be unconstitutional. There has to be, and I think it says it here, if two or more persons in any state or territory or any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States conspire to overthrow, put down by force, destroy the government, so sedition, but they have to take an affirmative step.
Yes, and the force part I think is what's important. To oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay. That force part's what there's just saying, hey, you have the right to refuse an illegal order, isn't attempting to overthrow or undermine the government by force. It's not that. And so therefore, and I'll say this, again, not a lawyer, but I do know this. The free speech laws as we see them in the United States and our free speech protections are vastly more robust than they were when the founding fathers sort of wrote the First Amendment. And I think the courts have ruled that way. You can almost see, it'd be interesting to just do an entire show on just sort of what free speech used to look like circa founding fathers, to how that's changed. And it is very much, you used to be able to be charged with sedition and stuff for things that were far more loose. Now, it sort of made sense. And by the way, this is the same as the term insurrection, right? And so when we look at sort of charging Trump with insurrection and, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment and this and that, I would argue that back in the day, pre-Civil War, when we were still worried about sort of what Britain was going to do in the United States, and still had their tendrils in, and then Civil War, where you literally had a war in the Union, they were far more concerned about things like insurrection, sedition, because it was fresh on everyone's mind, and we saw the consequences. Now, we haven't really enforced these laws, and they've kind of been reinterpreted either through just strict non-enforcement, or literally there have been court cases brought up to say, well, wait a minute, we're going to have more robust free speech protections. So I think it is 100% completely erroneous for Trump to imply that this meets the legal bar for sedition. I don't even think it's anywhere close.
No, it's not. And I mean, to get anywhere close to it, you'd need to have some kind of overt act, right? Like someone's actually taking a step to overthrow the government. It's not enough just to talk about it. And even if you were going that direction, you'd still have the Brandenburg Standard. You'd still have to get past the fact that actual incitement to violence is a tough standard. It's not enough just to kind of casually say a carefully worded statement that reminds people of their rights. And I think that This is why I found it so frustrating that Trump said what he said, because I get the impulse, right? Like, you're the commander in chief, and people who are ex-military are telling your service people to disobey you. Like, that's, it's going to, that's going to be incredibly frustrating. Like, you're going to get riled up by that, but it wasn't a measured response. And I really think he could have claimed the moral high ground here, and he could have made them look very stupid, but instead he kind of flew off the handle, and now he looks like the one who's, saying reckless things. And that was the bait, right? That was the bait in the trap. They had a careful statement, and they were hoping to inspire a reckless response, and that's what they got.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny how I think both sides. Now, ultimately, do I think that this harms Trump that much? No, not in the grand scheme of things. And this is, I understand Democrats, they're going to jump all over me for saying this, but the bar for Trump is lower than other presidents and politicians because he says so much shit like this, right? And this is Trump. From when he came down that escalator, he's the type of dude, he'll call a country a shithole country, right? Like, so when he talks like this, it's almost built in the cake, right? It's like, yeah, you get it. This is how Trump talks. But again, I wish that he would have approached it. I think that what it does is, like, there are people on my side, they're like, good, fuck it, it brought attention to this, and you should be hyperbolic, because fuck them, they deserve it. I don't even disagree with that. However, to me, it sort of illustrates a lack of sort of treating this with the seriousness that it deserves. Because he should have met with his team and been like, what the fuck are these Democrats doing? I want an immediate investigation, right? Let's not talk about charges. The bar's there for an investigation. Did they collaborate? Are they in communications with people in the military? Like, suggesting with communications behind the scene, look, if he orders you deployed to Chicago, disobey. That's different. Now all of a sudden we have a higher standard. And so if he's talking in a legally technical correct manner, to me that signals even more the severity of this, and I wish I would have seen it. As such, he says this, and then what's worse is if he would have just said it's sedition, I don't think anyone would have gave a shit, except maybe weird lawyers like you and weird people like me that like do this stuff online. But most people wouldn't have gave a shit. It was the second part that was basically like, it's the death penalty, and then retweeting people that were basically like, hang them. This is what needs to happen. Now you're broaching a thing where the average person takes note of it, because it's like, is Trump really suggesting that people will be executed that are against him in the Democratic Party? And I think that that's dangerous and stupid in the sense of it harms him politically.
Well, this is why I get so frustrated with the continued employment of Pam Bondi, because and if anybody from the Trump administration is watching and you need some legal minds, drop me a line. But like, you've got to have lawyers of a really high caliber who, when you have an idea, you're like, that's seditious, I'm going to put the hammer down on these motherfuckers. Then you go, holy shit, I've got a great lawyer who I can run this by. And you send it to the lawyer, and the lawyer goes, hey, what if you said that's seditious behavior, and we will investigate to the furthest extent of the law? What if you said that instead? Would that express the point adequately? And then you go back and forth. Maybe it needs some exclamation marks. Maybe you need to make it punchier. Like, I don't like you. There's a back and forth. It's not like you got to always listen to your lawyer. But I just don't get the sense that she's in the loop on this.
No, I think there's no
she
way
sucks. She was advising on this.
I think she sucks for a litany of reasons. For me, the Epstein debacle should have been the last day that she was in office. It seemed evident to me, right, that she had no clue. She had no clue what had prior been released on Epstein, and made these big claims. And then, as all most of the time, people in all walks of life, but it's magnified when you're on the public stage like her, the excuses afterwards actually dig your hole deeper. And so when Bondi comes out after that, and it's like, oh, well, they had these files and they're sitting on my desk and they've deleted. I know there was stuff there and they've withheld it or they deleted it. It's like, okay, where's that? And now it's like she's dug this impossible hole. She was lying to us at some point, or she's grossly incompetent, and that's probably worse. And there's been, who was it the other day that she broke this story that was just like, oh, we found out that when it came to, like, who was it? One of the senators or whatever, that they had got their email communications or something. And I can't remember who it was. This was pre me going to Nashville, where you had someone that's usually quite favorable of the administration was like, yeah, this story was broke 9 months ago. And Pam Bondi's out there talking about it like breaking news. This is the attorney general that doesn't know as much as sort of the average sort of Trump supporter online. And she's talking about this stuff like it broke the day of. And it's taking, it was John Solomon had to correct her. John Solomon, I like, but he's definitely carrying water to a degree for the Trump administration. So, when he's coming out and he's like, Pam Bondi, I think she's wretched. I think that she's in over her head. She doesn't know what's going on. And I think it's really showing up in embarrassing ways for the Trump administration that would be avoidable if they had someone that was more seasoned and knew what they were doing more in that position.
Well, look, it doesn't need to be her, and it clearly isn't her, but there needs to be a lawyer, maybe the White House counsel, right? But there needs to be somebody in the White House that has his ear, that he trusts, and that he can run this stuff through. And when I say it's obviously not her, it's because it's clear he's not getting legal advice in real time, right? And unfortunately, you do need these people. You need to have advisors who can help you navigate these waters and avoid just stepping on these rakes. And one of the things right now is that whatever her credentials are, she's clearly not that person. She's clearly not in the loop, which is me being charitable, because if she's in the loop, that's even worse. But I'm assuming she's not in the loop, and that's why we're getting these outcomes. So I don't know if he's going to right the ship and fire her and bring in somebody that he trusts more and will collaborate more with. But it's been a never-ending string of debacles with her, and at a certain point, you've got to wonder, like, why? Why does it keep happening this way?
If I could steal, man, and I've heard people say this that are lawyers, actually, she's had quite a bit of success in front of the Supreme Court on maybe issues that aren't as front and center as Epstein and other things. And I don't disagree with that. But the question is she having success because she's her, or is she having success because many of these issues that are brought to the Supreme Court are so laughable that I could win them, and I'm not a lawyer, right? And is it worth the embarrassing PR faux pas that you see her make over and over and over again? That's how I look at it. I just
also John Sauer, the Solicitor General, he's got that raspy voice, right?
Yes.
So whenever you listen to oral argument, he's the raspy guy. He's been unbelievable before the Supreme Court. He's the one arguing these cases. He's got like a 92% success.
Yeah, he's crushing it.
He's crushing it. So it's not like, but I'm not sure. I mean, look, I don't know how they collaborate. I'm not in the weeds. I'm not behind the scenes, but I'm not exactly willing to give her his shine.
Correct.
I agree. I think that's him. I think he's more of a law nerd type. Like, he's in the weeds. He's reading the cases. He's making the arguments. He's standing up like that. I think that's his purview. And I think he's tremendous at his job.
I agree. A couple questions on this topic, and then we'll move forward, or comments. Zach Galpy, thanks so much. $10 says, Pam's just a pretty face. That is all they'll see when she is good for. I do think there's some truth to. I think that as much as we on the right might want to lament this, it is true that sort of identity politics plays a role in how people are positioned in some of these roles. And I wonder if she was chosen because she is a woman, and that they thought that would sort of push back against some allegations that could be made against a different attorney general if they were a man or something. I'm not sure, but I don't think she was the best pick even on paper. And I certainly think that's borne out, that she hasn't been the most experienced or up to the task.
The thing about her is on her credentials on paper, her resume, she certainly had a great legal career, but this is an administration that takes very aggressive positions legally. Like, Trump pushes the boundaries legally. And when you're pushing the boundaries legally, you need hyper competent counsel. You don't need a spokesperson. You need a killer. You need somebody who's really going to get into the weeds technically and be like really able to thread these needles. Because Trump, let's be honest, that's a tough client. In the legal business, that's a tough client. He's not always going to listen to your advice. He's going to say things even if you didn't want him to. He's going to put you in some positions that are challenging. This is not an easy person to represent. And it just doesn't seem like she's up to the task, to be totally honest.
Yep, I totally agree. Our friend How Long Nate, $10, thank you, says it's not sedition, but Trump tends to throw out ideas publicly and see what the legal team could use. Yeah, I think that, look, this is always going to be true of Trump. It's a double-edged sword. His impulses, sometimes against all odds, actually end up working out very well. For example, I know in 2016, once he won the primary, basically every consultant was like, okay, the immigration issue is a loser. Don't talk about it. And he went against them, and the way he talked about it, it wasn't like a book smart guy. He was very emotional. And sort of other things he did when he calls out Rosie O'Donnell for being fat in the debate stage. If I'm like a campaign manager, I'm like, no, what did you just do? And yet it works out. But you also got to take the bad with that. And sometimes, you're right, Nate. I don't think he is thinking this thing through. I think he's just like, to hell with them. They're undermining me. That's sedition. What would, George Washington would have had people hung if they did this to him during the Revolutionary War. And I don't think he's thinking it through. So is it true that he's throwing out hyperbolic terms and then seeing what the public, testing the public and seeing what his administration can do? Maybe, but I don't think it's really 4D chess like that. I think the dude just shoots from the hip. Sometimes it works out and sometimes not,
I agree with you, but I also think people like you and me play an important function when he does that. Because you saw this with the Epstein files. He was against releasing them, right? But he throws it out there, and if the base says, hold on, Mr. President, it turns out we think you're wrong, right? He will change his position, not if a national poll says that there's a problem, but if his base says there's a problem. And I think that we can be useful there, where we're saying like, hey man, like it seems like you're stepping on a bunch of rakes right now. Let's find a way to fix that.
I want to say welcome to everyone that rated over from Rattlesnake TV, Jake Rattlesnake. Great dude. Great to be working with him on some projects. He is amazing. So thank you to all your raters. I'm here with attorney Ryan Mullally. This is our show, Law and Order. This is episode 2. We're going to do it every other Monday. So we're talking about legal issues. We're just wrapping up talking about our first topic, which is sort of the Democrats implicitly suggesting that the military not follow some of Trump's orders because they are unlawful and how bad that was. And then Trump calling that seditious and basically saying the penalty for that is the death penalty, which is also very bad. And so we're just wrapping up. The last question I have on this is, again, from Zach Gilby. Thanks so much, $20, says, this won't hurt Trump's political capital. In fact, it would help with his base. And this is the idea. He's talking about the idea if they would charge under USC 2387. In fact, it would help with his base if you message it right. For example, the demo would want to protect people trafficking fentanyl instead of the Americans or something like that. Yeah, I mean, there's a way to file these charges in a way that could benefit you politically. It's a risk, right? Anytime you're talking about theoretically charging people of the opposition party, there's big upside, but there's big risk. Now, I think that the risk has been blunted by the fact that the Democrats did this so flippantly against Trump himself and people in his key group. But it can backfire if it seems as if to, the constituents, and most importantly, to sort of not diehard Trumpers. Look, this dude's not working on the economy. This dude's not working on deporting people like he promised. Instead, he's just prosecuting under the flimsiest of excuses, Democrats. It could backfire. Me, myself, I say yes, but that's because I'm so outraged by what I saw as the corruption against Trump. I think the Democrats will never stop until they themselves fall under the exact same type of things that they wanted to institute in their opponents. But what do you think? You would probably be against even the charging, would be my guess.
I'm against, what I'm against is charging flippantly, right? Because look, you just had, and I think this is our next topic, you just had the charges against Comey and Letitia James dismissed, right? So it looks like you're throwing a lot of junk. You're up there and you're just throwing wild pitches, right? And that's when the argument that these are all political prosecution starts getting some force, is because it looks like you're just throwing out charges when really the federal government, typically when they investigate a case and they bring a case, it's normally a pretty damn good case. They've really thought it through. So What I wouldn't want them to do is bring charges just to bring charges, right? Now, what you're supposed to do is investigate first, right? Investigate. Were these Congress people sending text messages to soldiers, asking them to disobey lawful orders? Were they speaking to generals and saying, "Hey, don't you know this is illegal"? Were they working through back channels? Like, these are questions that, if the answer is yes, all of a sudden change the charge, right? Like, we were looking at the law earlier. If you had, I have no reason to think this exists, but if you could find an email where one of these senators was emailing a general saying, "You know this is illegal. You should order your soldiers not to do it." Now we're talking. We have a different case, right? But if you're just going off the social media post, I think you got really low chances of success, and it makes it look like you're throwing junk all over the place.
And listen, like, if you're a Trump supporter, and here may be one way to look at it, like, charges shouldn't be brought, but an investigation needs to happen. I believe, and I've been told over and over, this is the joke on my channel, as I criticize the investigations into Donald Trump going way back to Crossfire Hurricane, right? I was told over and over this by left-wingers that I debated, that no one's above the law. We all know that one, right? And the bar for starting an investigation is very low, which is true. And even the Durham report said that, right? It's like, listen, basically there is a lot of leeway given to the Department of Justice and the FBI and what they could do to start an investigation. Durham ultimately concludes that the starting of the investigation could be legitimate, but the tools that were used within the investigative steps were illegitimate. That's where the FBI did wrong. But the actual opening of the investigation, it surprises me, and it may surprise a lot of you. You can basically start an investigation even against a president, even against members of Congress, and it's a very low bar in order to start the investigation. Now, with Trump, my belief was that it was, there's your man, now let's find the crime. Hey, start the investigation, and who knows what their emails will turn up. Maybe there's evidence of other crimes that will turn up, maybe financial crimes, etc., that would turn up as you're investigating whether or not they violated US 2387. So, you know, for me, I would not mind if they don't bring the charges as long as they're investigating. In a normal world where it's not, the gloves are off, investigate and charge Trump and his associates for anything possible, then maybe I say, yeah, this clearly doesn't reach the bar of something that I would like to see charged. But we're not in a normal world. We're in a world where Democrats aren't going to stop, and they're going to charge Trump and his team for things less than this. And so if they bring the charges, I'd be okay with it. But most importantly would be taking the investigative steps, I think, because I think there's zero chance they get a conviction on what we see now. I don't think that's possible.
There's no way. And it makes you look bad. It makes you look bad to bring charges when you can't get a conviction, right?
Yeah, but then here's the other part. Depending on where you bring the charges, if it's in DC, there will be no conviction, no matter what. They could have smoking gun email evidence. The dude that threw the sandwich at law enforcement, he just got off, thanks to a DC jury. So, I mean, there's no hope of any conviction. Just like the person in your chat, Orange Man bad, who cares? He's a fascist. So if you just start under the base assumption this man's a fascist, so anything goes against him, so there will be no conviction. And so if I'm Pam Bondi or on her team, and you know, it's like, well, what are the chances of a conviction in DC? I would be like, zero. You could have them on camera, and they're not going to convict. It's against Donald Trump. So at some point, you got to bring the charges anyways and just let people see. Just like the sandwich thrower guy. Look, we all know that guy was guilty. We all know it. Was it the end of the world? No. But it was clearly meets the definition of assault. It's on camera. It's indisputable. And the jury says, we don't care. We just don't care.
That's called jury nullification.
Right.
Like at the end of the day, a jury can just vote however they vote, and there's nothing you can do about that. You could bring the prosecution in a different district, right? Because I doubt that all the conduct was DC based. Like probably someone was at home some weekend. Like you could probably find some way to bring to massage this and bring a different district if you were going that direction. And if the investigation does find stuff, like let's say you find something incriminating, then you could ask your lawyers to run the traps and say like, well, is there a way to do this under military code rather than civilian code?
Correct.
Is there a way, you know, because that is a real, that's a nasty maneuver, right? Like if you want to talk about something that makes you look like a fascist, that makes you look like a fascist. So But if you had a smoking gun, if you had some kind of like crazy document that you could show the public and say like, look what this motherfucker did, then things change a little bit. So I hope that they are investigating. I think that's the right thing to do. I suspect they'll find nothing. I suspect that these Democrats weren't actually trying to influence any particular soldiers and that they were just trying to do a PR stunt. I think that's what we'll find, but you should check.
I agree. I tend to lean your way. I'm sort of black-pilled on the idea of any legal recourse whatsoever against any Democrat for anything ever. And so even when you have them dead to rights on a lot of these issues, I'm like, either a jury will vote not to convict or a judge somewhere will throw out the case, which brings us to the next story.
I was going to say, boy, are you going to hate the next topic, Rob?
Yeah, that's it, right? For those that didn't follow, it was news that broke this morning. Both the cases that were brought by, now what's her name? It is Lindsay Halligan, is that correct? Who was appointed interim, was appointed by the Trump administration, and she brought cases against Letitia James for sort of these mortgage claims or things, falsification of documents on a mortgage application, and then against James Comey. Those charges have been thrown out pending appeal. And the reason for that is the appointment of Lindsay Halligan was deemed not legal. And so therefore, any of the charges that she brought were thrown out. I guess I'll just ask you, what are your initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the law, and if you want to pull it up, it's 28 USC 546. And basically what the law says, because Ms. Halligan is not the U.S. attorney for D.C., right? That's a vacant position. And she was appointed to hold this vacant position, but she wasn't the first person to hold this position. She's the second, right? Or maybe even the third. And if you look at this law, what it says is if there's a vacancy, the president can appoint someone to the position. Fair enough. But in section C2, it says they can only have the position for 120 days. And then in subsection D, it says if the term expires and you still don't have a permanent person in the position, then the district court gets to pick who the attorney, who is the U.S. attorney. So the judge looked at this and said, wait, hold on. Her predecessor was already in the seat for 120 days. And then he left because his term expired. Well, when that happens, you don't get to appoint another temporary person. The district court gets to appoint them. So her appointment was invalid. And that means that when she signed the documents on behalf of the government, she had no valid appointment. She was not actually the interim U.S. attorney. So therefore, there was no indictment, legally speaking. And that's how the judge ended up ruling. And this is a pretty embarrassing faux pas on a number of levels, because for Comey, in particular, the statute of limitations on his alleged lies to Congress has expired. So even though this was dismissal without prejudice, which technically means that you could bring the charges again, it's not clear they can bring the charges again because the statute of limitations might be over at this point. It ran on September 30th, if I recall correctly. So it's possible that these charges go away forever as a result of this error.
Now, we shall see about the specific law, about the vacancy law. I think that I don't know that it's as much of oversight by the Trump administration as you would think, because I remember when this occurred, this being brought up. All right. And if people remember, I forget who the predecessor to Halligan was, but this was basically a piece of shit that was intentionally allowing the statute of limitations to run out on a bunch of things, like Letitia James was going to refuse to bring charges, allowing the statute of limitations to run out against James Comey. Now, who do you blame for that? Trump? That's who you should blame. He's the person appointing him. And you could also blame the Republicans in Congress who are allowing, and maybe you know a little about this, the blue slip procedure that sort of allows the opposition party to sort of withhold a vote, which means that you can't get the votes necessary to do a confirmation. Because Republicans have been too gutless to do anything about that, this means that in perpetuity, any sort of vote will be able to be held up, which means that the district court in D.C., which hates Trump, which is corrupt as shit, will get to appoint who they see fit in this institution, which means that there's zero chance that anything will ever occur out of DC because of this. So aside from that, though, here's the area that I'm interested in, and I've seen people bring this up. Because Halligan's work was signed off on, and some of these legal cases were signed off by Pam Bondi and other people above Halligan in the administration, does that mean that the charges would necessarily drop? And I think that's going to be where Trump's team argues in an appeals court, like, look, even if Halligan was appointed erroneously, the work she did is legitimate and was signed off at people at the DOJ, therefore, their signature still applies within the statute of limitations, et cetera, which means that we could file with another sort of creating attorney there. What do you think about that argument?
So I think it's possible. What's tricky about it is they kind of try to work around like that. They basically, Pam Bondi appointed her, Ms. Hybar, a special attorney. And a special attorney would have had the power to indict, right? So they appointed her that, but they appointed her that way after the fact. And then they said, this appointment is retroactive. So it was effective, time machine style back when she did it. But the judge didn't buy that. And I think that there is a problem with saying that you can retroactively appoint somebody to a position, right? Like, I mean, just you either have the position or you don't. There's no time machine here. So they're going to have to make an argument like that on appeal. They're going to have to say this was with the blessing of the administration. This is with the blessing of Pam Bondi. But they didn't dot their I's and cross their T's. They could have done both at the beginning and said you're both the interim and the special attorney, right? And then given her the belt and suspenders. And then if one gets thrown out, you still have the other. But I'm not sure you can do it after the fact once the court tells you there's a problem. That might be too late. Now, the Trump team has to make this argument on appeal because I think they're dead in the water. If they try to bring the case again, statute of limitations is going to bite them in the butt. So I think they have to make the argument. I don't think it's a great argument. The Supreme Court's been very friendly territory for them. But the Supreme Court's also very particular about appointments and making sure that constitutional officers have constitutional authority. Mm-hmm. So this doesn't strike me as their best case. I think that a lot of the times they've gone up to the Supreme Court, I've said they're going to win for sure. This one, a lot closer to a coin flip.
What do you think about this? So I saw people pointing to this. So this is 18 U.S.C. 3288, indictments and information dismissed after period of limitations. Whenever an indictment or information charging a felony is dismissed for any reason after the period prescribed by the applicable statute of limitation has expired, a new indictment may be returned in the appropriate jurisdiction within 6 calendar months of the date of the dismissal of the indictment or information, or in the event of an appeal, within 60 days of the date of dismissal of the indictment or information becomes final. Or if no regular grand jury is in session or appropriate jurisdiction when the indictment or information is dismissed, within 6 calendar months of the date when the next grand jury is convened, which new indictment shall not be barred by any statute of limitation. This section does not permit the filing of a new indictment or information where the reason for the dismissal was the failure to file the indictment or information within the period prescribed by applicable statute of limitation or some other reason that would bar new prosecution. Do you think this falls within the parameters of, look, this was legally filed within the statute of limitations, the person that filed it was then removed because their appointment was considered illegal, but because this was within the statute of limitation, there's 6 months more to file?
Well, this is, I think, their better argument. So I'm glad you brought this up. So just to kind of demystify what's going to be the issues here. Imagine kind of like two hypothetical worlds legally. In world one, the first indictment of Comey was legally deficient and was dismissed, will be appealed probably, and you go through all the timing in the statute, and you might get a grace period. Okay, that's world one. World two is the first indictment doesn't exist. It's a legal nullity. It wasn't deficient. It's a nothing, right? Because you had no authority when you brought it. It's not like you lost a case. It's like if I signed an indictment against you, Rob, and I was like, I, Ryan Mullally, indict robnoerr for sedition. And you're like, well, you have no fucking authority to do that. Right. I don't give a shit what you wrote on this piece of paper, Ryan. What the fuck are you talking about?
Right.
So if the Supreme Court, and I think it's probably that this is the argument that probably goes up. If they say it's a deficient indictment, maybe the grace period applies, and maybe the Supreme Court puts it in that bucket. But if they say it's a legal nullity, there was no indictment in the first place, so the grace period is not going to help you.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. The other option that I've seen is, and this is I'm far flimsier on because I haven't looked into this at all, but the idea that you could potentially bring charges against Comey in another district, and it wouldn't be necessarily the same, but it would have to do with more of a vast conspiracy. And so it would be almost like the sort of charges like a RICO charge, that the statute of limitations wouldn't apply, because my understanding is that it has to do with the last act within that conspiracy. That's when the statute of limitations begins. So if there are people, or Comey himself, that furthered actions more recently than 5 years ago to sort of cover up these actions, or to broader be in a subversion or a conspiracy against Trump, then this sort of charge could still apply. Do you buy that?
It depends on what evidence they have, right? And we saw this, when there was litigation in the Comey case earlier. They had all kinds of evidence about Comey's behavior that they didn't put in the original indictment, or they hadn't gotten their ducks in a row yet. So they have more information. Now, can they string that into a broader legal argument against him? Maybe. And I will say that this is an unusual case, because typically the statute of limitations is a lot less clear, right? Normally there's conduct over a many-year period. Like, think about like a bank robbery.
Right.
They plan it. They buy the gear. They rob the bank. They hide the money. They flee. They're hiding from the law. You catch them. It's like, well, this conduct spans 18 months. Right. So when does the statute of limitations stop running? Well, it's when they get arrested, right? Like, typically, because they've been fleeing the whole time. Here, the charge was for a lie on a day. So the statute of limitations was a clear 5-year run from that hearing. And honestly, I think we all said this when the Comey indictment dropped. This was a weird indictment. Like, most indictments have a lot more meat on the bone, a lot more facts. This was obviously, and I think we all saw, this was rushed because she was put in office and she only had a few days before the limitations period was going to run. This wasn't their best work. So it's possible they could go back to the drawing board and come up with something broader if they could show him lying over a long period of time, or leaking confidential information over a long period of time, even misusing documents like in the Trump document case or the Biden document case, right? But they would need to have some information that we just don't have yet. And I think they probably do, but if they could do that, they should, because that's by far the cleaner way of handling this.
Do you think, based on what you've seen and what's been publicly made available on this specific charge, not on a broader charge, do you think that Comey is more than likely guilty?
This one seemed thin. Because they had, when they were litigating this, they released these really interesting documents that showed that Comey had a habit of releasing information through this lawyer. Who's a law professor, right?
Richmond, I think.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. But the statement that Comey was indicted for was about releasing information through another guy. And it kind of looked like what Comey did is, like, if you're under oath and you got asked a question and you're delighted to answer it because it was phrased wrong, right? So, they're like, did you release information through this guy? And he knows it's Richmond, right? And he's like, no. Because you didn't say Richmond.
Well, now, to be clear, the indictment didn't say Richmond's name, right? People assumed it was McCabe, but it may well have, am I wrong about this? It may well be Richmond. The problem is this: the reason people assumed it was McCabe and not Richmond was because the statement said that he allegedly lied, and this is off of memory, I don't have it in front of me, was something to the effect of, did you order anyone at the FBI, an employee of the FBI, or know of an employee of the FBI that released this information to the press? And he gleefully answered no. The question is Richmond an employee of the FBI? Because he was paid as sort of a special appointee to help out, but technically, does that make him an employee of the FBI?
Yeah.
And so that's the issue. I don't know. Now, it could well be, because I don't think it's been made clear in the indictment, which you are correct in saying it was sort of bare bones. We don't know who person A is, to my knowledge, yet. But I think that people are suggesting it probably is Richmond and not McCabe. And if so, does that meet the criteria of, as an employee of the FBI? I think there's an argument to be had. Well, even if so, Comey could say, I didn't believe so. And his intent will be necessary to prove the lie, correct?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, the question there is it plausible that he was threading that needle when he made that statement, right? Where he's saying, no, you asked about employees of the FBI. And again, we're both going off memory, so it's possible we're getting the exact words wrong. And Richmond is a law professor. He's not an employee. He doesn't work at the FBI. Now that's awful cute, right? You're being awful cute there. But are you lying? Are you perjuring yourself? That's a more technical question, right? So
it's so brutal. And for those of us not in the law profession, like, it's so infuriating, right? Because it seems like anytime they want to go after Trump, the intent is always like, what doesn't matter? We'll be able to get a jury because this man's so disliked, particularly in DC. We'll be able to convict him. Anything, it doesn't matter. We can charge based on the intent. But it's actually very difficult to prove intent, right? And you see that with people that are on the other side of this. I'll give you another example that I think is analogous to this. Like when Dr. Fauci is being asked by Rand Paul, did you, when you were at the NIH, fund gain of function? And he's like, no, we didn't fund gain of function. And then when it turns out like, yeah, he did, he's like, well, that's because I used the term gain of function in this very hyper-specific definition. And I could prove that we've used it in that time before. Now, we know that Fauci damn well knew what was being asked, and we know that he was being disingenuous, but the legal bar for proving intent, if he could make the claim like, here's how some people use the term, here's how we've used it in the past, and technically we didn't do these few technical things. I think that that's sort of the argument, like analogous here, where it's like, look, Comey could probably convince at least a couple jurists to be like, listen, I didn't think it was a lie. I literally thought the question was, hey, anybody who is a employee of the FBI, as in an official FBI agent or director or something like that, did you have them? And I didn't. I had my friend who happened to be on the payroll at the FBI at the time, but wasn't what I considered an employee of the FBI. It's brutal, though. It really is.
Well, this is the problem, right? Because let's be honest, Mr. Siebert was, he is the interim, who is the head of the Eastern District of Virginia. He was the guy. He didn't want to bring the Comey charges, right? So he got fired and he got replaced. And this whole thing got put together. What was it? From memory, it was like 2 or 3 days they had to put this together. So this was a rush job. It was a rush job, and it wasn't done in kind of like a buttoned up legalistic process. And the problem of when you do that is you end up with a little bit of a garbage in, garbage out problem, right? It's like in law, you do have to cross your T's and dot your I's correctly. That's just part of what it is. The technicalities matter. And unfortunately, this was such a rush job that you've just seen a number of these errors. Like we also had the story come out recently that it seems like likely that the grand jury, only the foreman saw the final indictment, right? They showed the first draft, then they cut one of the counts out. They showed the second draft only to the foreman who signed it, and the rest of the grand jury didn't even see it. So they would have had other problems procedurally, because they were rushing. And Miss Hybart, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is unseasoned, got appointed very quickly, and mistakes were made. And this is what we were saying at the beginning about like the stepping on legal rakes. Like you got to have a team in place that just knows how to do this work, because some of these mistakes are avoidable. These things could have been fixed if you had the time and the personnel in place to fix them.
Here's the problem. I don't disagree with you. Here's the problem, though. And I want to be clear when I say this, in no way am I defending Trump. One of the things that Trump said in his first term was one of the great things about him is he surrounds himself with the best people. And that's bullshit. He does not. And there's two types of bad people that Trump surrounds himself with: incompetent people and corrupt people that are a problem. I'm not saying everyone around him is one of those two. I'm saying those are the two that we see problems with. And when you surround yourself with people like John Bolton and you claim we're going to drain the swamp, what'd you expect was going to happen? I feel the same about Bill Barr. Now, I was screaming to the heavens that there were obvious things that people in the FBI did that were corrupt, and Bill Barr was refusing to do anything at all. And the problem is, well, then you're at the mercy of you lose an election. Now, you had about a year under Bill Barr to do something with James Comey. He didn't. Then Joe Biden wins, appoints his people. He doesn't do anything. Bam, 5 years. So now you find yourself in a scrambling position. Trump's in a unique, difficult position, though, if I'm honest. Despite the fact I'm making it clear, I'm not giving excuses to him in the sense that I'm saying there's no culpability. But I am saying this. Let's assume from perspective, and I believe this, maybe you don't, that there is a lot of corruption that occurs at these institutions at places like the FBI. How do you find people to weed out that corruption that aren't intuitively within the system already? That's the problem. And Trump's having this problem starting in 2016. He even talked about this in Joe Rogan's show when he did that, which was like, he was shocked at how many people he had to appoint. Well, if you're trying to, let's assume from Trump's perspective, he's like, this is the swamp. Okay, who is technically qualified to be in those positions that's not already part of that swamp? So who are you going to find from within that's like, yeah, we need to aggressively go after the FBI? You're not going to find them. So what do? Well, you bring in people that are outsiders, but what's the problem with them? They don't have the expertise and the wherewithal to do anything about it. So then you end up with mistakes being made. So you're in this sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you appoint the person that's the career official like Bill Barr, he ain't going to do shit. Right? He's just going to let it go because he's part of that very system that you're criticizing. But if you put someone in there like Halligan and you only give her 2 weeks to do it, she's going to make mistakes that good attorneys are going to be able to pick up on. Right? So it's frustrating. And for me and people like me, if you believe hypothetically that these sort of institutions are filled with people that are corrupt at leadership and have been for a long time, and when I say corrupt, I merely mean this in this context. These are people that are self-interested in maintaining their positions, and they don't want someone else to come in and hold them accountable for possible crimes that they've issued. Then how do you go about doing something? And I'll tell you what you don't do. You don't wait until the last week of the statute of limitations. You can't do that. And Trump's argument would be, yeah, but the Siebert guy that was here was refusing to bring charges. You appointed him, man. And you appointed Bill Barr in your previous term. You gotta be more aggressive. And, unfortunately, I think that it's a question that I'm going to be talking with you for months and months and months. What do you do if there's a bunch of key people in the legal system in this country that just decide, fuck it, we know best and we don't even give a shit. We're going to do whatever we can. I'm some activist judge in the Ninth Circuit. I don't give a fuck. No, Trump, you can't do that. You can't fire people in D.C. Now what? And you got to just rely on the Supreme Court every once in a while, sort of overruling and going, no, Trump's allowed to do that. And yet they're allowed to stymie him every step of the way. At what point do you say, look, something radical needs to be done because the system's not working? Go ahead.
But I mean, before you do talk about like something radical that needs to be done, let's talk about something basic that needs to be done, which is the same thing I said in the other segment. He needs to have someone who has his ear, who talks to him on a daily basis, who has legal training and legal expertise that he actually trusts, right? Because what you said is, yeah, like they're scrambling at the last minute. It's like, well, holy shit, Siebert didn't want to do this. It wasn't like a mystery that Siebert didn't want to indict Comey, right? So that was clear. That guy was in office, I think it was 120 days, and then he got an extension from the district court in May. So he was appointed kind of indefinitely by the district court, and that went to September. So you had months of this guy on the job, right? The fact that this crossed Trump's desk with like 3 days left, that's the problem, right? Like and I'm not talking about like even like, Comey on some cosmic level needs to be punished. When I'm saying problem, what I mean is from like running the White House efficiently. having people in your orbit who can cross these T's, dot these I's for you. Like it's very clear to me from the outside looking in. This is what happens when you have a legal fuck up, right? So it's 2 days before the deadline, 3 days before the deadline. Someone goes, "Oh, sir, did you care about indicting Comey? Is that something you cared about?" And he goes, "Of course I cared about that. I've been yelling about it for months." Like, "Oh, well, it turns out in 2 days you can't do it, and no one's going to do it. Siebert won't do it. What are you going to do?" He's like, "Well, fucking fire everybody and get someone else." And then they're scrambling, and it's a mess. And the only the solution to that isn't radical. The solution is you need better staff.
Yeah.
Right. Like you just need better staff. You need people who are going to like put this on your calendar and bother you about it and make sure you know, and that decisions are made in a timely fashion, because this is an own goal. And honestly, I think it's important to tell the administration, like, shit, we actually, those on the right who are supporting you expected results, and the people who are fucking this up for you, maybe they need to go. Maybe somebody else needs to come in who can do a better job.
I felt the same way the entire first term. And you said something earlier that's absolutely true. Trump's unique in that most politicians have more of an ideological bent. Maybe they do so for corrupt reasons. Maybe they do so for legitimate. They have an ideology. Trump's not that. Like, Trump's more of a, like, I don't think anyone's calling Trump an ideologue. Like, you don't say to yourself, well, what really makes Trump ticks, like a strict adherence to the Constitution, or that, he's super about like Christian morality, or he's super about fiscal conservatism. Nah, none of that's Trump. Trump's sort of like a transactional guy. He's the businessman. He's like, I bring smart people in the room. We all compromise. We get something that, both sides could be a little upset about, but majoritarily happy. That's my game, right? And because of that, like, Trump's unique for better or worse in that his constituents can steer him in different directions. And you're not going to see that from a lot of other politicians. Like, if Rand Paul or Thomas Massey's constituents were like, actually, I want you to vote for a big spending bill, they're going to be like, then vote for someone else. Yep. I'm not doing it, right? That's not who I am. Trump would be like, oh, okay, if that's what my people want, sure. If there's incredible demand. Now, it's not always that way, but so I do think that these are issues, and maybe now we'll transition into sort of the Epstein issue here. These are issues when you're a Trump supporter, you're making a huge mistake. One, you're making a huge mistake if you follow anyone blindly and assume whatever they're doing, a politician, especially if you're Christian, not to get too biblical here, but there's only one human that you should ever think's infallible, and it ain't yourself, right? Mm-hmm. It's the big JC. Other than that, there should be no politician, no other human that you have 100% faith. So where if they come out one day and say X, and then the next day say the opposite of X, like, oh, the Epstein files are really important, and then I don't want your support. This is a Democrat hoax. You're an asshole if you think the Epstein files are important. You should be like, no, fuck you, right? That's what you should be. But it's even more true of Trump, because you actually have the possibility of enough of his people rise up, his supporters. He might say, oh, wait a minute. This does tend to be something that's important, so I'm going to run with it.
The Epstein files is a great example of where this matters, right? And hopefully he's getting this feedback, because he was pushing against the Epstein files release, and his base wants that released. They want them fucking released. They want them badly, right? And the people who stood up to him, Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Massey, they were proven to have had the ear on this, right? So now they're going to get released. There's this new law, but that doesn't mean that, I think people have just imagined that the Epstein files is like a manila folder of neatly curated data. And that's not it. We're talking millions of emails, Rolodexes, phone logs, plane logs. We're going to be talking terabytes of data. It's going to be a mess. And the way you curate it, the way you package it, the way you provide justifications. We released this name, but there's an investigation, and that's why we didn't release. Like, you're going to need to have some delicate expertise, people who can both do the law side and the politics side and massage this for you. Because if this is done right, this could be a major coup for Trump. And this is due to be released in early January. It might get delayed, but that's when it's supposed to be released. And if this is done well, this could be a huge win for him. And if it's done badly, it's going to be a massive embarrassment. So,
if you had to guess, and Pam Bondi's in charge, how do you think it's gonna go?
I'm saying, like, if you were gonna hire some people, now might be the time to hire some people. Because I was talking to my friend, actually potentially criminal Sean, recently about the Epstein files, and there's the law's written in a way where it says, there's an exception for ongoing investigations, and they've launched an investigation. And we've seen that, and no surprise, everyone's in the Epstein files. Everyone. And I'm not saying everyone's a pedophile.
Of course.
I'm saying if you know anything about Epstein, he was a pedophile. He was a sex trafficker, but that was part of what he did. The big circle is that he was a professional networker. He knew everybody. He donated to everybody. He went to everyone's party. He knew everybody. Like, that was his business, was to know everybody and be connected to everybody. So you're going to see some crazy names in there. And, if the Trump administration wants a political win and they have the right legal horsepower, they could find a way to make this list a very compelling piece of political theater. I don't know if they're savvy enough to do it, though.
Well, you've already seen, and again, you could say this about both the Republicans and Democrats at this point. Both of them have the good fortune to have the most incompetent opposition, right? So this week has been brutal for the Democrats when it comes to Epstein on a litany of issues. First, you had what was her name, Haskett, right? Where it got released that she's literally texting Epstein in the middle of a sort of deposition.
Have you seen that video?
It's brutal. It is absolutely brutal. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen. As far as just mind blown.
Well, keep in mind, she's the delegate from the Virgin Islands.
Right.
That's where Epstein Island was. Right. So she's from there. And now at this point, Trump and Epstein are enemies. They're no longer buddies by the time this hearing happens.
What year is this? This is 2019?
It was 19, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael Cohen's testifying against Trump. And Plaskett is up there texting with Epstein. Now, keep in mind, he had already had a plea once. People knew that he was into some very bad sexual stuff by this point. It wasn't a secret. And keep in mind that Epstein had a connection with a financier called Leon Black, who was the head of something called Apollo, billionaire. And Leon Black had to step down because of this. But part of that was that Epstein got I think $140 million for giving Mr. Black tax advice. Keep in mind, Epstein's not a tax professional. He's giving him advice about something, though. And Mr. Black had to settle with the Virgin Islands. He didn't admit any wrongdoing, but he paid them $60-something million because of his Epstein connections. So all of this is in the Virgin Islands. This is the heart of it. And he's texting her, telling her what questions to ask Michael Cohen about Trump. He says, ask about Rona. That's Trump's secretary, I believe.
Yeah.
And she asked about Rona, and that got her name in the record, which meant that now that this woman could be investigated later. It was...
This is the video, just in case you haven't seen it. This is all true.
And when you watch this video, think about the level of power and influence that Epstein wielded, where he had Delegate Plaskett on speed dial, and he could text her in the middle of a hearing, and she would do what he said. That's insane. The level of power this guy wielded.
So it's real quick. It's only a minute and a half, but it's blew my mind to see it.
Unbelievable video.
This is Washington Post, by the way. This isn't Breitbart. So you're going to see, I believe they matched the text up here.
Barack Obama was president of the
United States. This is it.
And while we were once driving through a struggling neighborhood in Chicago, he commented that only black people could live that way. Attorney-client privilege, yes, I will turn it over.
He says, bring up Rona.
Has pointed out, misled this committee even today in a written submission that contradicted your testimony. You have suggested you are going to review that. Are you going to review it in our next break to correct the record, yes or no?
Yes.
Question.
She has no idea who Rona is. She's asking, is that an acronym?
Campaign as a representative, as a spokesman, even in your words today, it was your idea for the campaign dating back to 2011. Is that accurate, yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Weisenberg and other individuals, Ms. Rona. Who are those individuals? Are they with the Trump organization?
They are.
Are there other people that we should be meeting with?
So Alan Weisselberg is the chief financial officer.
You got to quickly give us as many names as you can so we can get to them.
Yes, ma'am.
Is Ms. Rona, what is Ms. Rona's position?
Rona Graff is Mr. Trump's executive assistant.
And would she be able to corroborate many of the statements that you've made here?
Yes, her office is directly next to his. And she's
Good work, he
involved in
says.
a lot that went on.
Now, I mean, again, it's surreal when you think about this, that like all of this sets Trump up. By the way, one of the messages that got released that Democrats picked up on was sort of this like Epstein saying in his emails, Trump, there's not a good bone in his body. And it's like, I don't know that that's the win you think it is, that this convicted PDF is like, I think Trump's a bad man. Trump's my enemy. And like Democrats are like, aha. And it's like, yeah, but that's nothing, and then to see this, what a self-own by the Democrats here on this portion. And of course, the problem is, like, I could show you real quick just to follow up with this. It's a minute and a half. I won't go with it. But Raskin was asked by CNN today, like, what do you think? What do you think about this? Like, you guys care about Epstein. What do you think about one of your colleagues in real time texting? And he's like, well, Epstein was one of her constituents. And that's the Democrat talking point in this. She had constituents there in the Virgin Islands. Jeffrey Epstein was one of them. And anyone could have called her up at that point and texted her at that point. This is laughable. And again, this just goes to show, and this is, let me be clear. Let me be absolutely clear and shit on the Republicans here for a minute. The truth is, both Republicans and Democrats are grandstanding. This is about justice for the victims. Bullshit. This is about politics. That's what it is. It's both sides trying to say the other side's connected to Jeffrey Epstein. That's what's going on. The truth is there were people on both sides of the aisle with at least tenuous connections. And now it looks like the same Democrats that didn't have shit all to say for 8 years under Obama and 4 years under Biden that are now beating their chest screaming, Epstein files, Epstein files. A good many of them, we saw Hakeem Jeffries. His office sends out an email in 2013 after Epstein's conviction that's like, hey, we'd like to do some fundraising. Would you like to come to dinner with Jeffries, who they're calling Brooklyn's Barack, and Barack Obama? Come to dinner with us and bring your checkbook, basically. And Jeffries is just like, well, this is outrageous. Yeah, it is outrageous. And so, to your point, given we've already seen that, it's sort of like, who's holding the bag with this evidence and who gets to selectively release it? They're going to be the ones that win the PR role in this. The truth be told, if we all got to see it in real time and someone unbiasedly as possible curated, we'd probably see a lot of shady connections on both the left and the right. But as it is, it's going to be who gets to get to that PR blitz first. We saw the Democrats try to do it, and it sort of blew up in their face this week. But yeah, I'm with you 100%. If Trump's team's smart and says, look, we have to hold some of this back because of pending cases, and by the way, it takes time to curate it because we're talking about terabytes and terabytes. Here's what we have at first. Oh, look at that. It happens to look bad for the Democrats. Wow. Who would have thought, And what are the Democrats going to do, bitch? Well, this is selective. You mean like you guys did with the shit you were releasing with the, Virginia Giuffre's name redacted, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait a minute. This actually, by the way, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but the last thing, and I'll give you a chance, that Virginia Giuffre email, right, where Epstein says the dog that's not barking is Trump, given what we know, what she said, look, Trump was like a dude that tried to help me, he didn't do anything wrong. It actually sounds like what Epstein's saying there is like, I wonder who ratted me out to the FBI. You know who's been suspiciously silent? Donald Trump. And he was hanging out with one of the alleged victims, sort of him asking like, shit, did he talk to her? And now he's helping her go to the FBI? That's how it read to me, at least.
And I will say that one got me, because they released that email with the victim name redacted. And I think I even tweeted about this once where I was like, Trump's done. They cooked. They got him. And then but that was the cleverness, right? They released it with the redacted name because there's another version with the name unredacted. And if the name's unredacted, you can look her up and you can see she testified under oath that Trump never did anything untoward. And I think this is what you're going to see in the Epstein files. Because let's just like be honest and like cut the partisanship for a second. Both parties have had these documents, as you said, for years. For years they've had them. If there was a clear-cut case against Obama, against Biden, against Trump, against Clinton, if there was a clear-cut case where you could get a conviction against any of these people, someone would have brought the case by now. Obviously, they would have brought the case by now. What you're going to have instead is exactly what you were suggesting, Rob. It's going to be a bunch of data with some unconnected bullet points where it's like, oh, so-and-so was on a plane, and then Epstein sent them an email 3 weeks later, and then they went to the opera together. And it's like, all right, well, that makes them look very bad because they went to an opera with a known pedophile, but it's not a conviction. It's just very awkward. And that's dollars to donuts. That's what these files are.
Yeah.
And the thing what made me crazy about Trump resisting releasing them for so long is because he was resisting them. The Democrats got to kind of spoon feed it into the media narrative.
If he would have just,
the same day that they signed the CR where they got nothing and took this gigantic L, right? They release Epstein and now the media story changes. So, there's an art to this. There's an art to marrying the legal side of this with the politics side of this. And, if he wants to do this well, he's going to need some very competent people, and we'll see. I'm not filled with confidence today, but, that could come later.
I'm sure that both me and you agree. In an ideal world, what we want to see is just truth. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, the idea of playing the game of politics is less important to us than, like, we just want the truth, whatever it may be. But we don't live in that world. And we're talking about politics now where billions upon billions upon billions of dollars are being spent just in presidential elections, let alone in lobbying and off-year elections, et cetera, et cetera. It's a big business, right? And so politics, the game is important. It really is, the game and how you're doing this stuff. And this was one of the things that shocks me is when I see people, I sort of expect, obviously I have my biases. The people that I support are people I think are better and either better for the country or more virtuous or more honest, something to that degree. And the people I dislike are worse on those sorts of issues. But what always shocks me isn't someone's moral failings. It's their intellectual failings in the game of politics. And there's seminal moments. I'll give you an example. Remember Stacey Abrams, and I'm going to bring this up not because, as a fat guy myself, I'm not saying this to besmirch her, a little more heavy set, right? A little older, right? She takes this picture at the height of COVID with these kids, right? And they're all masked, and she's not.
I remember that picture.
And I remember thinking, like, yeah, I know that she knows it's bullshit. The whole mask thing's bullshit. I get that. But no one pulled her aside in her team and was like, madam, this is a really bad look. This looks really shitty. Like, no one thought of that. That's what I find shocking. Not that she would be so callous that she's like, oh, all these kids have to wear masks, but I don't. But that no one thought better of it. Like, wait a minute, optically, this looks bad. That on steroids is how I felt about Trump. It is one of the worst cell phones I've ever seen in politics, where he came out and was like, this is Democrat hoax. And if you are falling for this, then I don't want your support. It's like, Trump, that's your core base. Your core base thinks this is a big issue, and you basically just told them, I don't want your fucking vote. And it's like a lot of those people, I don't know what percentage, a lot might be 2%, it might be 1%, but there's going to be a non-insignificant percentage of people that are going to oblige you and say, okay, then you won't have my vote. And your party won't have my vote. And that's a huge fucking mistake when you could just be like, absolutely, huge story. Look, it's being tied up. You remember this? Like, there was some judge, I think in Florida, that was like, nope, you can't release grand jury evidence, blah, blah, blah. They could have used that as an excuse. We're trying our damnedest. We are. But it's being held up in courts, and there's things to consider, and there's potential lawsuits. And there's actually validity to this. There's a reason that if someone's not convicted, that we oftentimes don't get to see the evidence that the grand jury had, right? Because a lot of it can be embarrassing. Like, for example, let's say hypothetically, I'm accused of a crime, right? But it turns out the grand jury gets evidence that exonerates me that I was cheating on my wife, right? And I'm at the casino with some other woman, right? You don't just throw that evidence to the public and say, okay, this guy didn't commit the crime, but look how bad this looks, right? You don't do that, and we understand why. The same's true here. Like, I've said this, I'm not going to go into the whole thing. I've talked to my audience about this for months. I get it. Trump's someone from his perspective that's like, I've been falsely accused of sexual shit, regardless of what you think, if he did it or not. And let's assume for a second he didn't. So he's like, I've been falsely accused. And he's probably got these powerful people that are like donors or whatever that are like, listen, Mr. President, my name's going to show up in this list and I didn't do shit. I went to a cocktail party. You know, I didn't know this guy's story. I didn't do anything. And now my life's going to be ruined because every time someone Googles me, my name's going to appear next to Jeffrey Epstein. And so I don't know that this shit should be released, you know? And I think that at the same time that was going on, I knew this because I watched certain people like Mark Halperin, who was like, trust me, big story about to break in a major newspaper about Trump Epstein. And that was the whole Trump signed the birthday card of Jeffrey Epstein. You remember this story?
Yeah.
And so that's right around when Trump said, this is all Democrat hoax. And I think what happened was Trump's probably being told there's no big there in these files, right? And it's going to implicate a bunch of people that didn't do shit wrong. And by the way, the Democrats are about to use this to smear you. That's what they're going to do. So if you release these files, then this story is going to break in the Wall Street Journal that says Trump's connected to Epstein. And they're going to say, oh, look, here's photos of Trump hanging out with Epstein before. And here's this birthday card. And bada bing, bada boom, now you're connected to Epstein. So Trump, as ham-fisted as he is, it's like, fuck that. Then bury it. We don't want to hear anything about Epstein anymore. Let's focus on other shit. And it was a huge mistake.
Well, because
an absolute mistake.
The people, and I'm very sensitive to what you just said. Like, you're absolutely right. There's stuff in an investigation dossier that is sensitive, embarrassing, and in the normal course of events should not be released. Like that's my baseline. I would agree with you at 100%. But also, the people are sick to death of obstruction on the Epstein issue. Like, they just couldn't be more clear that they want this out in the open, right? So when you and I are saying there's a way to do this right, the way to do this right is to broadcast that you are releasing everything to the extent that you can, and that you're curating it and making it something that people can look at and digest for themselves and learn to the extent that they can learn, and that you're not hiding behind legalese. You're trying to make things easy for the public to understand, because I think that it's very clear that the public in general, and his base in particular, is desperate to put this issue to bed. They want to know what happened, and there's no way out but through at this point. You know, you just got you got to release this stuff.
I think that I can't get over again. Let's put you get hired by Democrats, right? You're helping them out with a campaign. Like, forget about the morality of this. Are you not shocked by how bad this was for Trump? Like his initial, how bad it was for Pam Bondi, how bad Trump. I can't think of a worse cell phone in recent politics than him. Basically, that statement he put out was like, this is all hoax. And if you're still thinking it's an important issue, basically, fuck you. I don't want you. I mean, to me, that's an all-timer of horrible, horrible shit that you could possibly say that makes you look guilty in addition to all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I again, and it's just been a reoccurring theme on this particular episode. You need to have somebody who can help you through these legal issues, right? Where you're saying, like, because that's what lawyers do. Like, yeah, we do the law, but we also do counseling, right? Where you're saying, like, I'm gonna tell them it's a hoax, and it's like, sir, if you tell them it's a hoax, it makes you look guilty as fuck. Yes. You know, like it's just, you know, that.
I mean, we have it on record. There were victims, so yeah, the idea that it's a hoax is clearly bullshit. Now, you could say the specific things that will be alleged are a hoax, maybe so, but what bad framing? Just terrible.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I don't think he has somebody in his orbit he trusts enough, right? And or at least not in this role, right? I think he trusts Rubio. I think he trusts Vance, but he doesn't have somebody in this role. And he needs somebody in this role because a lot of these mistakes are avoidable. Some of this stuff is just like stuff you could have not done. Like, you know, like we talked about earlier, but like with all the fucking influencers with their little white binders, right? It's like, well,
horrible.
If you were later going to call it a hoax, you can't have done the white binders like that. You know, people aren't idiots. They remember what happened last week, right? And it makes you look like you're just saying whatever you want to say to get you out of the situation, which makes you look guilty. And I don't think that's what it is. I think your explanation is the better one. But at the end of the day, these are avoidable mistakes.
Yep,
Right.
totally agree. Now, a reminder, we got 15 more minutes with Ryan here, and I'll keep streaming afterwards. But get your super chats into any questions you have for myself or for Ryan regarding these topics or any sort of political, legal topic that you may have an interest in. You are going to be doing a debate at 9:15, correct? You want to give people a little tease of what you'll be talking about
So
tonight?
after I drop here, I'm going to be heading over. I don't want to say her name out loud.
I don't mind. It's
okay.
Sarah's channel. It doesn't mind.
Yeah,
No.
I don't want to start another
No.
tomato
You're
food
perfectly
fight.
fine.
But yeah, I'm going on Sarah's channel and debating. I'm taking the affirmative. The right should abolish the Department of Education. So I'll be making that argument as forcefully as I can later on tonight. And the other thing I'll just say, by the way, I'm so grateful for the people on your channel who have showed up on my little baby channel. Since the last time I was on, I think we went from like 300 subs to 400 subs. So we're a baby channel, but we're growing and we're about to get monetized thanks to the good people here and in other communities who have supported me. So I'm just deeply, deeply appreciative of all of you.
Yeah, I hope that everyone that's watching here will go over. Now, here's the thing, right? Like, I think that what we need to understand from the perspective of just my audience, and a lot of my audience comes through like the Crucible and other things, a lot of the focus is fighting sort of cultural battles or political battles. But the legal components of that, like you would have to be blind to not understand how important the legal components to politics and in fact to culture are at this point. And so you're going to actually want to be listening to people that know what they're talking about on the legal side of this for two reasons. One, because the other side's going to be doing it, right? They're going to be pushing legal matters and like focusing on people that are attorneys. And secondly, because you're going to want to be informed to expect sort of what's coming up and, getting opinions on that. So I hope that everyone will go check out your channel because for myself, it helps me immensely, not just in debates I do, but also with just the understanding of sort of what to expect coming up. It's a huge mistake. People in laymen, and I'm sure you get this a lot, even outside like legal matters and politics, laymen tune out with legal matters because it's quite frankly, it's boring to a lot of people. It's a lot of like jargonistic semantics and but it's very important. And I think that people tuning out is a big mistake because then that's how you end up in a system. And if you're from our perspective, like that support me, where you see how stacked some of these juries are, how stacked some of these districts are, this is because so many people for years have thought, man, doesn't affect me. I'm not really focused on it. And you see the ramifications.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Peterson in his earlier days when he was a little bit more poignant, let's say, I'm trying to be nice, but he made this observation I thought was really telling, which is that people on the right, because they're just different than people on the left. They're different in character. They're different in the way they think, the way they articulate themselves. They're often in the position where they know in their bones something is wrong, but they can't articulate why. Right. So I think that one of the services that people that someone like I can do is I can explain to you what the issue is. Right. And then that can give you the tools you need to make your case. Right. Because sometimes that is the position where you're saying like, Jesus, something about the way that Trump's being treated in this New York case just feels wrong to me, but I don't exactly know why. And when I tell someone it feels wrong, they give me a bunch of jargon in response. I don't know what to do. And I do think that it's possible to do better than that. But it does take a little bit of suffering through boring experts.
But the details are what's important so many times. Like, real quick, we didn't get to this and we could talk about this for a whole show probably, but I know that recently there were some big left-wing streamers talking about whether or not we should have a Nuremberg style trial
oh my God.
For members of the Trump administration. Basically, I believe a claim was made that something like 80% of people working for the Trump administration should basically face Nuremberg-style trials, potentially looking at life in prison, if not harsher. I didn't catch all of it. What's your take on sort of that talking point that we see from people on the left?
I mean, Destiny's just, he's just so far afield these days. But his argument, as I understand it, is that there's an insurrection in 2020, and anybody who is a Republican in office who is not an avowed never-Trumper is aiding and abetting and continuing that insurrection. And therefore, they should all lose the ability to hold public office going forward. And I think I told you this a while back where I was saying, like, it's funny whenever someone says that to me, I'm like, and I think I said this to Destiny before he blocked me, where I was like, you're just making the argument for pardons, right? Like all you're doing is you're saying, Trump, before you leave office, pardon everyone. Because if we're this crazy, if we're taking seriously the idea of having tribunal hearings for every Republican in the country, then of course you should pardon them all, because that's just that's a batshit insane thing to say. It's wildly outlandish. And also, like, the Nuremberg trials were justified because of the atrocities committed by Nazi Germany. What's the comparison point here? Like, where are the ovens? You know, where's the death factory? Where's the gas chambers? This doesn't strike me as a comparable situation.
Well, and then not to mention, like, this is surreal. So the way that Destiny and a bunch of other people defined what an insurrection is, and this is what I was trying to tell them for years, they defined it so broad that quite clearly many actions on the left are going to be constituted as insurrections. And Destiny's admitted on his channel that a lot of these ICE protests are themselves insurrections. So given that, could I say that Democrats are aiding and abetting or engaging in an insurrection right now, and so they should be removed from office under Section 3 of the 14th, or they should face Nuremberg style trials? You see the problem with this? And Destiny and his cohorts have even admitted this. We're not saying that insurrection in itself is bad. There could be, after all, technically what the founding fathers did was an insurrection. So, of course, far be it from us to accept that an insurrection has to be bad. And so when he's saying, oh, all Republicans have engaged in an insurrection and need to face Nuremberg-style trials, fine. If the other side plays the same game using the same language, he himself would have engaged in an insurrection. Do you see the stupidity of this, of this loaded language?
It's unbelievable. Well, first of all, no one's been charged with committing an insurrection. Like, there's no criminal case for that. And Congress has to enact legislation for Article 14. So for the 14th Amendment, in order to disqualify people. And then you have what's called an ex post facto problem. If you enact a law and you prosecute people for the law after you enacted it, but their conduct was beforehand, you're criminalizing something that's back in time. It's the time machine problem again. You can't do that. So the whole thing is just like a fever dream. And honestly, I don't even think he takes this seriously. I think he's gotten to the point where he's just saying things because it draws attention and it's a hot take. Because, like, it's not a serious suggestion. I can't imagine anyone would take it seriously. But maybe that's just the state of Destiny's brain these days, where he just throws shit against the wall and sees what sticks.
Well, and it's certainly there are people that listen to him and are hyperbolic and engage in the hyperbolic nature of what he's saying as well. But let's take the worst actors of it outside that are just being, saying this stuff for the sake of hearing themselves and getting an audience. There are certainly people that were like, oh, January 6th, insurrection, Trump engaged in it. And regardless of what you thought if January 6th was or was not an insurrection, the real rub was the bar that Trump engaged with it. And here's the problem. When you start to say, well, Trump saying things like fight like hell, or Trump passionately talking about, this is why I say this every time I debate these people. In order to incite violence, does it have to be a lie? Can I incite violence telling the truth? For example, Ryan, if I were to say to you, and this would be true, I saw your wife like making out with a dude, and I know that you're going to be like, what the fuck, right? And you're going to go punch that guy in the face. Did I just incite violence? Well, maybe technically, but is a legal matter? Probably not. We wouldn't say that that's something that I would be prosecuted for. So when you talk about Trump being held legally responsible for inciting violence, or Trump engaging in an insurrection for his language, like, the truth or the falsehood of it's irrelevant. It's just he said something that inflamed passions. I mean, really? That's the argument Democrats are going to make? That for years spent saying that the country's founded on racism and is systemically racist, and Trump's a fascist and he's all this evil and that. It's like, you don't see the problem. When Chuck Schumer said that Kavanaugh would reap the whirlwind, is he then held responsible when some maniac tries to assassinate? You see the issue here? And I hope that more sensible Democrats realize, like, oh, now I understand. I legitimately hate what ICE is doing. But that doesn't mean if someone goes out and commits a violent action against ICE that I want to be held as somehow connected or incited it. But that's what they were trying to do with Trump and with MAGA people when it came to January 6th.
Well, and look, like, let's say that they were connecting the dots with the things that I think are stronger arguments, like the the call to Georgia or the false slate of like those are things that I think legally have a little bit more teeth. Are they insurrections? That's another question. But at least there's more there. Didn't we already?
But that's not engaging in the riot, which they call.
No, exactly. But also, didn't we already have these hearings?
Right.
Like that's like, didn't we do this for like, it felt like forever during Biden's term? Like we had hearings every day, right? And they did the evidence, they showed the video. I think we had the hearings already. So what we're going to have the hearings again? It just you get to the point you're like, is this just what politics is going to be forever now? It's going to because I'm warming up. I'm waiting for them to explain to me how after they've labeled Trump Hitler, that Vance, Rubio, and DeSantis are all somehow worse. Because
that's what's going to have to happen. That has to happen. Look, this is where like one of the major disagreements we had was, which I don't think the Democrats ever stop. I think at this point that the Democrats, and more to the point, people like in the FBI, what's the ultimate lesson? I mean, probably the most egregious actor within the FBI was Peter Strzok. Like literally tweeting to his girlfriend, person he's having an affair with, who's also a lawyer for the FBI. We need an insurance policy to stop Trump. He walks away with millions of dollars, right? He's a darling of the left. And until people are held accountable, that's it. They didn't learn their lesson. They're going to keep going. And, and I think that's why I say there's only one chance. There's only one chance to stop this. And that is that the Democrats feel the exact same standards that they sought to employ on others. You want to go after people for basically falsification of, documents on a loan application? Fine, fuck you. We're going to go after each and every one of you. Now, in a grand scheme of things, do I think that that's what I want our politics being? No, but this is it. If one side gets away with it with impunity and they could wield the legal system against their opponents in perpetuity without any ramifications whatsoever, they're going to keep doing it over and over and over. It's only when both sides suffer the consequences where there may be a detente, where people are like, whoa, we need to put the brakes on this. We need to get some shit in legislation. We need to have some sort of agreement that this shit can't happen. But that's never going to happen in a world where one side gets away with the impunity and the other side never does anything.
Well, we'll see what happens in a post-Trump world, right? Because one way this could end is that, let's say Trump hears about Destiny's bullshit scheme because somebody in Washington takes it seriously, right? And then Trump goes, oh, you think that's funny? I'm going to pardon everybody. And he just pardons everybody. He pardons every Republican politician in the country. Well, who are you prosecuting now?
Well, it doesn't matter. Let me explain why that wouldn't matter, right? It's because Republican DAs in Republican states, they're going to try to do things by the books. They're not going to bring charges against Democrats, but the Democrat ones will. They'll find any bullshit charge against anyone in any state and say, hey, can't pardon from that. So they'll still get the motherfuckers. They don't care if it's a bullshit charge. Whatever. They got some of the charges they got convictions for Trump on, the stuff up with Alvin Bragg, the E. John Carroll stuff. It's laughable. It's absolutely laughable when you look at these hearings, and it didn't matter. Jury's like, Trump, I hate that guy. Guilty. Trump supporter, I hate that guy. Guilty. And you're going to have these attorney generals that'll do it. So even that won't work. You'll see. He should pardon everyone, and it won't matter.
At this point, I think he should, because now there's precedent too. Like, when Biden, like when people gave him shit, but when Biden pardoned Hunter, I as a father, I understood. I was like, for sure, that dude's getting prosecuted. For sure. Right. And you're his dad. Like, what, you're going to let
I would
him
have
get
done the same
prosecuted?
for my son. Absolutely.
Of course. So like, if Trump didn't pardon everybody in his orbit after this administration's over, he's lost his mind. Like, it's the minimum he should do. And I'm hoping that at some point this cycle of prosecution ends. I don't know how, because I take your point. I think that like people are riled up, and the Democrats are ready to go. They want to do more prosecutions. The right wants to do more prosecutions. I don't know how you get out of this. But maybe if somebody gets in office like a DeSantis, somebody who's a little bit more of an operator, that could smooth the waters a little bit, because DeSantis is not the charismatic guy Trump is, but damn well if he's in power, everything is going to be done exactly technically correctly.
It doesn't
all the
matter.
time.
They'll charge him with crimes afterwards too. You'll see. There'll be judges that say that everything he does that's to weed out corruption or to enforce immigration is illegal. You'll see. I'd take that bet. I'll bet you. I buy these hot, spicy pickles that like nearly killed me on stream one day. I'll bet you eating one of those pickles on air. If we ever see DeSantis in office, you'll see the exact same bullshit stunts from the Democrat. It'll be irrelevant. He'll have better luck because he's not as careless with his language. It's not going to stop them. They're going to continue until they suffer the consequences.
All right, a pickle bet it is, Rob.
It is.
A pickle bet it is. But I got to drop so I can prep for this debate.
I'll put your link out there. So, yes, people can find you. That debate starts at 9:15. You'll be showing that in your channel, correct?
Yeah. So if I don't want to siphon off your viewership, but if you want to see me argue about how bullshit the DOE is, now's the time to do it. And Rob, man, thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
We'll plan on 2 weeks from now, so not following Monday, but the Monday after that. We'll be right back to do it again. I'm sure there'll be no end to the legal problems and tomfoolery that we see from this administration and the Democrats. So we'll have a lot to talk about.
He does keep me busy. And if you don't mind, do whatever you did to boot my stream so I'm not live streaming on accidentally after I leave.
Yes, I will do that. So, all right. Always a pleasure, Ryan. Thank you so much for joining.
Good to see you.
Good luck in your debate tonight. I know you'll do very well.
Thank you all. Appreciate you.
All right, we'll see it. All right, remove. And then, give me 1 second. Let's remove. All right, I think that'll work. All right, I think that should be good. Ryan will be gone now. I promise I'll be right back to read the super chats or so. We'll stream for a while. Ryan is great. I really enjoy doing a show with him. However, for the rest of you fools, thank you so much for supporting me. We're going to do a little trying to get our goal of $357 today. I know you guys tapped out donating such a huge amount of money for a good cause this morning. I'm incredibly proud of everyone. We ended up sending over $1,100 over to the Crucible for their Thanksgiving fund, money that's going to go to hungry families here and churches that are helping hungry families for Thanksgiving. So I can't thank you all enough for that. It was a great show this morning. You'll be able to still find that on Rumble if you like. I have to use the restroom, so I'm going to do that. First, I'm going to switch back to my brand, then the normal America brand, and then bam, we don't need that here. What do you guys want? You want a grifting song while I'm in the restroom, or do you prefer I just let you see the incomparable chair you haven't heard enough about recently? Let's just give you chair. Chair, regale them with tales of what you were doing while you were here alone and I was in Nashville. You didn't even have the animals here. We had a pet sitter that we took the animals to. Go ahead, Chair. Get your donations in for Chair. I will be right back. All right. Chair? Anybody donate for Chair? No! I'm telling you, man, this chair. Can you get rid of this thing? Oh, man. All right, let's read the super chats that I missed. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for supporting Ryan. One more time, I'll put his link up. Again, we don't agree on everything, but I think he's a good dude, and he's coming at things from a legal perspective, which may be interesting to a lot of people. Jake W90, thanks so much for the $2. Says, good evening. Good evening to you. Naughty Germ, always appreciate $5. Thank you so much. The next few we read. How long, Nate? $10 says, by the way, Jake couldn't reach his goal 24 hours after his 2K food drive. Uh-oh. Leave poor Jake alone. The Aussie bastard anyways. We did great here. Look, obviously, it's for a good cause. What Nate's referring to is Jake didn't even know that I was using him, having a competition with him. He didn't even know. But the idea was we were trying to do it for a good cause. And I was saying that Jake had donated $2,000 that went over there. So, yeah. How is this the case? This pisses me off to no extent. I'll explain in a minute. So thank you so much. Crusader, thanks so much for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you so much. Memberships, I guess they're called. Always appreciate it, man. Gorilla Biscuit gives 2 gifted memberships. Thanks so much. Hollog Nate says, hey, Raiders, Rattlesnake. Like the stream, it's free. It helps the creators. Thank you. The great Zach Gelpy again, $10 says, but politically it didn't hurt him. It energized the base and distracted for the Epstein stuff for a few weeks. Yeah, I'm with you, Zach. I say go after these pricks as many times as possible. If you lose the case, so what? Better to have tried and not won than to do nothing. You're guaranteed not to win then. How long, Nate? $10 says, still 200 inches lurking. Hit the like. Thank you. Average Groiper, $5 says, sup, chat? Great to see everyone. Great to see you, man. Yoshi, $5 says, hey, Rob. Hope you've been well, buddy. Pam Bondi is a goofy. Yeah, she sucks. That's putting it nicely. Draco, $5 says, Ryan, tell old potato we miss her. And Yoshi, again, $2 says, this is for Chair, not Rob. Chair appreciates it. Now, I'm pissed off about something. Our good friend Andrew Wilson is streaming as we speak. That's fine. That's not what pisses me off.
That aligns with both the definition of Christianity. So I had this conversation with Jim Bob the other day.
What pisses me off is I didn't know there was a debate. I could have been helping with the preparation of that. But over there at the Crucible, I see that Connor is debating Andrew Wilson. Now, I know my mods always yell at me like, why are you telling people to go to a different channel? So we got that debate occurring. We got Ryan's about to be debating over on Sarah's channel about the Department of Education, which that'll be a good debate regardless of what I feel about the channel. So I wish Ryan well in that. Bandit, thanks for the $5. Says, I work in the food industry. I saw both sides of the extreme today. A church bought $3,000 for needy families, and a lady tried to get $200 worth of food for $35. Absolutely crazy. Yep. I've seen that sort of people trying to take advantage like that as well. Mr. B says, debate reaction stream? No, not in real time. I don't like doing that. It's unfair to the channels that you're watching. And for me, I like listening to the debaters, not listening to someone talk over the debaters in real time. It's different if you're reviewing the debate later. But, you know, I always get frustrated when, like, a presidential debate or something, I'm tuning into a channel and the person's talking over the candidates. It's like, dude, I want to hear the candidates. So, yeah, we're probably not going to do that. One of Trump's greatest weaknesses is his ability to hire good-looking women in high-profile positions. It's like he gets stuck in the apprentice shtick. Yeah, maybe. Not good. Not good. Yeah, Mystery is an exception. It's funny when he does it. But not me. I'm trying to analyze it seriously. What do you guys think? We're gonna lose a lot of viewers because of those shows that are going on right now. Maybe I just wrap up and I raid over to Andrew there. Maybe that's what I do here tonight. We had a good show with Ryan. I actually have some things to take care of that are not streaming related. I got to get on the fucking open marketplace for healthcare and find a policy. So that's going to take me some hours. I'm really looking forward to that. And then I want to have one Andrew, one on me. And then I also have a bunch of emails to respond to. I think with a little bit of luck, we'll have the merch store up by Friday. If not by Monday, it looks like it's definitely going to be an option. So I think that's amazing. And hopefully that's something that you all will be interested in. We'll get that merch store running, and then you can buy stuff in the colors and the sizes that you like. There'll be some more options there for you. So I hope that that's something that you'll enjoy. I know I will. So maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe we'll raid over to the Crucible. You can tell everyone there at the Crucible I said, I thought he was doing an invasion tonight, is what I honestly thought. So I planned to go until the invasion started, and then I was going to actually... but I'm always a fan of watching Andrew debate, and I'm always a fan of watching Connor lose debates. So it should be a good combination. So we'll raid over there. But I appreciate the Hardcore Rob fans. You guys are the best. I should be back. Actually, I'm not going to do the daytime show. That's not true. Let's do this. How about daytime show tomorrow is going to be an hour early? How about 11 to 1? Or how about this, 10:45 till 12:45? Reason being, my son gets off school early at 1 o'clock, and he requested that I be there to pick him up with my wife. And then, finally, it's happening, folks. Finally. We're putting up the Christmas lights tomorrow. My son is gung-ho. He gets off school early. He wants those lights up. Today it was a big cleaning up the garage. I did a lot of box burning, a lot of garbage taken out to the dumpster, etc. So got all that stuff done today in preparation for setting up the lights tomorrow. So that's the plan. We will... Oh, you did? All right, nice. Goody OD. I'll have to inquire as what they said. But I know going forward, it's going to be robnoerr.shop is going to be the link to the merch shop. So hopefully people appreciate that. So 10:45 tomorrow we'll be here. We're going to raid over to the Crucible. That's just beginning a debate now, so I won't stall any further. Thank you to everyone who enjoyed episode 2 of Law and Order today. I hope you guys enjoy that show. It's something that I enjoy doing, so hopefully you enjoy listening to it. I'm going to try to set up some debates going forward here. It's been a weird week for me. I'm still way behind, so if you messaged me, I promise I'm going to try to get to that. I've had a lot of stuff going on in the background, so hopefully I will get to you. I know there's a lot of people from DebateCon that messaged me with help on certain debates that they have coming up and things like that, and I certainly want to help each and every one of you. So I'm going to try my best. Bandit, $5 says, I have to correct myself. Andrew's debating is on point. I'd only really seen an invasion, which was 99%. Charlie Kirk and his family. We'll see you all tomorrow around 10:45 a.m. See you then. Oh, nothing happened. It's just Andrew started debating early and everyone's over there watching it. So I'm just going to head over. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Only in America is it possible to say, you know what, I don't like the way the country is going, and to do something about it. Take that risk. Take that leap of faith. Stay involved. Trust God and act obediently. Romans 12:2 verse. That God will use all things for good for those who love him. It's bigger than you. I want you to remember that. It is bigger than you. It's bigger than me. You are here to make somebody else's life better, the pursuit of liberty and freedom. You know what gives me strength? The hundreds of thousands of you that say, Charlie, keep going.
1 Corinthians 5 and 15. So that's all pretty amazing evidence, not just intra-biblical evidence, but extra-biblical evidence that Jesus Christ was a real person. He lived a perfect life. He was crucified, died, and rose on the third day, and he is Lord and God of all.